Hi everyone, I am Suman. In this video, let's discuss exception handling in Python. So, before going to this exception handling, we have to understand what is this exception and the difference between error and exception. Instead of talking this in definition format, we can just discuss with an examples. For example, let's take, so I'm just writing some statements here, condition here. So, if I just try to write some if condition, if 3 greater than 2, I just want to print greater, right, or else smaller, like that. I just wrote some code. So if you just understand this code, so here I will just remove the colon here. Now if I just try to run here, you can see we got syntax error, invalid syntax. So this is an error. So errors are the problems in the program due to which the execution of the program is getting stopped, right? So you can see this is an error, we got syntax error. Due to this syntax error, our complete program execution is getting stopped, right? So this is an example of error. And next thing is exception, right? So if you just want to talk about an exception, so instead of this, I'll just give a normal thing, right? A is equal to 3 and B is equal to 0 I have given. Here I'm just giving print A divided by B, right? Now if I just try to run, you can see now we got like 0 division error. So this is an error which occurred due to the input given by us. So we have given B as a 0. So when we try to divide A by B, we got an error. So this is an exception. So exceptions can be handled, but errors can't be handled, right? That you have to remember. That's the difference between exception and error. And now let's try to understand this exception handling. So if you want to handle any exception, we're gonna use the try block, right? We're gonna use this try block, and whatever the statements which you feel will raise an exception, we're gonna put that in this try block. So we are thinking that this statements gonna raise some exception, right? Raise some kind of this exceptions. So we are putting that inside the try block, right? And we're gonna use the except block also, try and except. Now what is except means? If an exception raised, right? If an exception, for example, if you just run that, we will get 0 division error, right? Then what it will do means, it will just come to except block, right? It will just come to except block and it will just print whatever we give in this except block. So I'm just giving print there is some error, right? So I'm just giving like that. So we just run that. You can see we got there is some error, like whatever we have given in this except block, we got that as an output. So we have to understand what's the use of this exception handling. So for example, let's say you are building an application of an calculator, right? You are just using the division inside that calculator. Like if an user gives the input as A and A is equal to 2 and B is equal to 0, if you didn't handle the exception, what we will get, right? The user will get the output which we got in previously, right? So if you just try to run it again, so if you didn't handle that exception, what the user will get in the web app, in the interface, he will get that this is a 0 division error, division by 0, like that it will get. So this all information he gonna get, but right, he don't want to understand everything. We who are writing the code, we want to handle, we want to know what this error, but they don't want to know all these things. So that's one reason we're gonna use this exception handling. So if you just give, now what the user will get on the interface, there is some error. So he will understand what this, so there is some error, right? Especially if you want to mention, right, what type of error he is getting. So for that you can just use except. What's the exception we got? 0 division error, right? So we will just give 0 division error here, except 0 division error, print there is, right, print can't divide by 0, right? So if I just run this, you can see, like if you want to handle this exception separately, you can just give that exception, except zero division error, and whatever the statement which you want to print inside that, you can just give that. And similarly, so for example, let's say instead of this 0, I'm just giving like a string here. Now if you just try to run this, now you can see again we got an error, means this is a type error, right? This is a type error, which means unsupported operand for integer and string. So this is a type of exception. Now if you want to handle this exception, similarly you can just give, right, except, I can just give except type error, and similarly I can just print can't divide string with integer, right? So I just given some exception. So similarly you can just give, right, you can just give multiple except blocks. So for one try block you can just give n number of except blocks. So for example, let's say if you just given all these exceptions also, right, I will just run. So you can see we got can't divide string with integer. You will give all those things, but in future, for example, let's say user, he gonna give some input instead of these two errors. Then he gonna give some, for example, let's say if you just give some x, he gonna give, right, instead of giving string, he may give like a is equal to x, like that. If you just give enter, you can see now we gonna get another exception, right? We don't know what, right? We as a programmer want to think what type of exceptions we can accept, right? At most we may think like 3 to 4 exceptions, right? But in real scenario, there may be chances of n number of exceptions, right? So for all those things we can just give, right, for all those things we can just generally we can just give except, right, except exception, right? We are just accept whatever exception we are getting as e, right? Generally mostly we're gonna use e, so I'm just giving exception as e. So I'm just printing e, right? So if I just try to run this, so you can see here I didn't specify any exception regarding this name error, right? So I'm just accepting whatever the error, whatever the remaining errors, whatever I got, I'm just accepting as e, and I'm just printing that. Now if I just try to run this, you can see we got name x is not defined, right? So that's the use of this exception handling. So that's how we perform this using this try except block. And apart from this try except block, we have another two blocks, that is else and finally. So if I want to discuss this else and finally, right, even while discussing this for loop, we have discussed this for and else, right? What the statement do? It gonna come to the else block only the entire for, like only after the completion of the for loop, right? After, without breaking, if the for loop is executed successfully, then it gonna come to else block. Similarly, like if we didn't get any exceptions, for example, let's say this try block didn't try any exception, then it gonna come to this else block and it will print whatever present in this else block. So if I just try to give some, right, I'm just giving 2 and 4, else I'm just print no exception, right? I'm just printing just normally. So if I just try to run this, you can see we got 0.5, that is this 2 divided by 4, and also we got this no exception, right? This try, like whatever present in this else block will be executed only when there is no exception raised, right? So that's you have to understand using this else block. And there is another block like finally block. From the name itself you can just understand this finally block. It means whatever it may be, whether you got exception or you didn't get an exception, whatever it may be the situation, but this whatever you wrote inside this, whatever the statement inside this finally block, it will be executed, right? So I'm just printing print successful, I'm just printing that. So if I just try to run this, you can see 0.5, like what this a divided by b, and no exception since there is no exception raised, and finally block, it will automatically be print whether there is, you can see the print successful, right? Now if I just try to, for example, let's say I will just give some 0 here. You can see if I just give 0, you can see we got this can't divide by 0, which is raised by this 0 division error, and you can see the statement which is in else block is not executed since this try block raised an exception, and you can see this finally block is executed, right? So that's this finally block. So if you just want to relate this to a real world scenario, like for example, let's say you will write, for example, for any application, you will just write some length, a big code, right? You will just write some, let's say 100 lines of code. So if in those code, if there is any problem in one line of code, if there is any problem in one statement, the complete execution of the program will be stopped if we didn't use this try except block, right? So that you have to understand. By using this try except and finally block, we can just do that. So if you just so let's take an example of this file handling methods. So we have already discussed that. So file handling methods, we're going to open and close the files, right? So for example, let's say I will just open the file here, right? I will just open the file here. So we have discussed it, right? If you just open the file, we have to close the file. So in this try block, we will just for example, let's say we will just write some code like f is equal to open of, we can just write some code, and here I can just perform, right? I can just write f dot write of something, I can just write something, and here I can just close, right? I can just close the file. So for example, let's say I'm not opening here any file, but let's understand this example. So if we are opening a file which is not exist in that particular location, for example, let's say if f is equal to open of, here I may be given some location, right, to access the file, to open the file. So if the file is not present there, then we will get an exception. So what it will do, it won't execute these statements f dot write off and f dot close off, right? So what we can do, so we have discussed, right? If we open a file, we have to close the file. So if we give the f dot close off here, it won't be executed, since in the first statement itself we got an exception. It will just go to the except block, and it will execute whatever present in that except block. So in this scenario, what we can do, we can just give this f dot close off, right, inside the finally block, right? Inside the finally block, we can just give f dot close off. Now even though we may, like, first we will just try to open the, right, first we will just try to open the file. For example, let's say, yeah, there is a file present there, and we have successfully opened the file, and let's say while writing the file f dot write off, we got some error, right? We are writing some, right, where the format which we are writing, it may be wrong. So if we just get an error in that, so what it will do, it won't execute this f dot close off. So now the file is already open. Now what it will do, first it will just come to except, and it will just print this exception, then it will come to this finally block, then it will try to close the file, right? So that's the use of this on this try except else and finally blocks. So I hope you understood this video. In our next video, let's discuss how to raise your own exception instead of for example, let's say here we are just raising except 0 division error, right? So this is something which is defined by someone. So instead of that, if you want to write your own exception, for example, let's say instead of this 0 division error, I just want to write our own exception, right? So let's discuss that in our next video. So I hope this video is helpful for you. If you understood the video, like the video. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe, and thanks for watching.